Hi Ajahn, can you please explain what the phrase dukkha dukkha pareta, bound by dukkha and obstructed by dukkha means? Specifically, what does it mean to be obstructed by dukkha? I read this in the chanting book, in the daily chanting to arouse samvega. So samvega is a word which means spiritual urgency. So sometimes to get the motivation to do something about our situation, we have to have a brutally honest look at our situation. And see if I can see some faces, it's helpful. So, bound by dukkha and obstructed by dukkha, it doesn't sound very optimistic. It's important to understand that that's one phrase that is there with that specific purpose of arousing a sense of wanting to do something about the problem. So in Buddhism, we acknowledge that there's a problem. That's the First Noble Truth. There is dukkha. And if you don't have a look at dukkha, you won't be able to learn how you cause it for yourself. And you won't be able to undo the causes. So that's why we have to look at it. Dukkha is to be known not as a theory, not as the words in Pali or Sanskrit or English, but as an experience. When you bring your mindful awareness, truth discerning awareness to bear on the experience of dukkha, then you have a closer look, you'll see that a lot of it is bound up with craving for and craving not for. And when you see the pain of the craving for and the craving not for, that is what helps us to let go of our craving. When we see the pain of it. But that's a process that we have to engage. So bound by dukkha and obstructed by dukkha. So there's probably a variety of ways that a person could focus on that. For myself, I'd just like to give the example of the 5 hindrances to samadhi, for example. So concentration in Buddhism, I understand, is very peaceful. If you can bring your mind to a collected state, it's a very peaceful experience. But then what comes up? The 5 hindrances to developing concentration. So they are obstructions, aren't they? And they're also unpleasant. So essential craving, that longing for something that is outside of yourself, wanting something, that feeling of lack, feeling of need, needing to fill the hole, sending the mind out. So the sensual craving, and then the mind gets hot with that. And Lord Buddha explains the 5 hindrances as being like robbers or bandits that steal away the peacefulness. So when you begin to develop a consistent quality of mindfulness and you recognize a hindrance and you don't feed the hindrance, you'll start to experience qualities like tranquility and rapture and serenity, equipoise. So those are very pleasant. So the point about recognizing a dukkha, which is an obstruction, is that so that you can learn to put it down. That's the third noble truth, the cessation of dukkha. So when we get to know these things, the second one is the irritation, aversion, anger. So sometimes if you're lost in an angry reaction, you might not notice that you're suffering, because normally there's the justification why you're irritated, why you're angry. And we get intoxicated with the mental proliferation. But if you look at the experience in the heart, when you're angry, when you're irritated, it's hot, it's dukkha. And then we have a sloth and topa. So trying to meditate, you want to be peaceful, and then you get these kind of heavy, dull feelings. Again, it's unpleasant. So restlessness and worry. Nobody enjoys trying to sit in a lot of restlessness or worried about a lot of things. That's also an unpleasant experience. And then doubt can be very painful. Doubt the methods, doubt the teacher, doubt your abilities, doubt the Buddha. And then what are you going to do? You can't commit to something in the way that you need to if you've got a lot of doubts about it. So, doubts can slow us down a lot. They obstruct the arising of a good, healthy attitude and energy to do something about our situation. So that's just one aspect that I could say that we are. Every time you try to make yourself peaceful, you will see some of these hindrances come up, and you can see that it is something that you cannot, until you're adept, you can't just drop these things straight away. And the mind is bound up with these things because of karma, because of kilesa. So we are bound by dukkha, obstructed by dukkha. That's a message to us to encourage us to put up a bit of a fight. So to be a spiritual warrior. And a spiritual warrior, that has nothing to do with being violent. That has to do with being determined to be generous, determined to be ethical and moral, to be virtuous, and to be determined to keep up your meditation disciplines. That's what a spiritual warrior does. And then you will have experience of deepening, sharpening mindfulness, where you're able to separate from thoughts and feelings. There's something that Ajahn Anan says, which I like to quote: that which knows suffering isn't suffering. So the mindful awareness that can know that something is dukkha, when you train yourself to rest in that awareness, cultivate that awareness, that part of the mind isn't suffering. So that's our refuge of Dhamma in the heart. So, but you have to recognize the dukkha, and then you have to separate that which knows from the known. And there's various ways you can look at that. The 4 foundations of mindfulness: just knowing a form as a form, thought as a thought, feeling as a feeling, mind object as a mind object, not building a sense of self and not feeding that. These various ways that you can sharpen mindfulness and get some space from the dukkha which obstructs. So, and then Ajahn Anan, I like to mention what Ajahn Anan talks about. He talks about temporary liberation. So if you study Dhamma, chant, listen to Dhamma talks, you will notice that in the past you were more reactive. In the past you had more suffering, and you learn how to put down the causes of suffering. You learn to be less reactive. That's because mindfulness and wisdom develops. Patience also develops. Loving kindness and forgiveness also develops as we train. So when in the past you might have had a painful reaction, now you recognize something much more quickly, and you can stop the reaction, or you can put it down more quickly. And then the mind is experiencing a liberation from a painful state that it used to fall into. And we actually have to acknowledge that, recognize that, and in a way, celebrate it. It's like, oh look, we do have these little victories. It's not that we're bound by dukkha and obstructed by dukkha constantly. If we practice correctly, we will get breaks from them. And experience being able to let go. Ajahn Chah's, a large part of Ajahn Chah's practice is that when you have mindfulness and wisdom, you can think skillfully, think wisely. You're able to put down an unskillful way of thinking and suffer less. You're able to think. He also used to say, you suffer because of wrong thinking. Very, very simple. And if you really understand what right view is, so Luang Por Chah put an emphasis on cultivating consistent mindfulness and reflecting wisely throughout the day, but also meditating so that your mindfulness has some energy behind it, and your wisdom reflections have enough power to kind of cut through our habits. And then when you do get some peacefulness, most people get some peacefulness, then to rest in that, enjoy that, and notice this is actually the potential of the mind. This is much closer to the truth of what your nature is and what your potential is than all of those painful things that obstruct. But you only get to the peace and the serenity, the tranquility, the letting go, the spaciousness through having a look at dukkha and learning how to let it go. And Luang Por Chah also used to say, we have to train ourselves to make big suffering into little suffering, and to make little suffering into no suffering. And he would, just say, don't make a problem out of it. There are many, many ways he would abbreviate the teachings to very simple phrases, which encourage people to let go and take responsibility. And enjoy the peace that you can experience if you maintain your disciplines. So the second question, I hope that was helpful to some people. Second question, could Ajahn speak a little about Ajahn Anan and how you became his student? So that's my very good fortune. So I'm mindful not to talk too long. This could be a long story. So I try to give a brief version, but it's a nice story. So I have many teachers, of course, and I'm very fortunate to have many teachers. So my first teachers were Ajahn Pasano and then Ajahn Jayasaro. But I'm the type of person who I would say as a young monk was wealthy with suffering. I had some special abilities to suffer. And I knew that's such a sort of psychic power, that I was gifted at suffering. And I knew that I was going to need some big guns. I was going to need some real help. I had faith. I had the faith. But because being a kind of a sensitive person with an artistic temperament, it's not an easy marriage in a kind of a regimented boot camp style forest monastery. That was not an easy thing. It's kind of like a round peg in a square hole or something. But Ajahn Jayasaro and Ajahn Pasano explained many teachings very well. But I also knew that I needed a teacher with some very special abilities, just to inspire me a bit and also give me some pointers specific perhaps to my character. So I actually went to the Emerald Buddha in Bangkok. This is where I'm a little bit unusual as far as Western monks go, because I have this faith character and this kind of quality. Even in my early 20s, I had this. Some people say I'm a bit more Asian than Asian people. Sometimes that's true, and other times when I'm looking at the work project at the monastery, I'm more like a Westerner. So anyway, I went to the Emerald Buddha because I'd heard that Lompo Biek had said that if you make an aspiration there, the devas will listen and they will respond. So I went. This was like 2 days before I went to the jungle, and I was trying to have a balanced practice. I mean, it was pretty intense time. I went to see an autopsy one day so that I could contemplate body parts while I was in the jungle. I went to the Emerald Buddha the next day, and then the day after that, I went to the jungle for 3 months. And so I made this kind of aspirational prayer. I said, Emerald Buddha, I'm interested to be a monk my whole life. I am. However, I'm going to need some help. So if there is a teacher who I have made auspicious karmic connection with, who can help me, please arrange it so that we meet. So then I went off to the jungle with Ajahn Sunando, and Ajahn Chandako was in there, and Ajahn Kalyano came in a bit later. Some of you will know these monks. This jungle place doesn't even have a town. I mean, it's on the border of Burma, and it's very, very remote. And so there's a few people making some food, and you live up on top of a mountain, which is like a 40-minute walk away. So in some respects, the chances of meeting your master in the middle of the jungle are fairly slim. But the one time that Ajahn Anan came to Dowdam, it's called, that jungle retreat place, was that time. And so probably about 2 weeks after that prayer, Ajahn Anan came with a group of maybe 5 or 6 monks, I think 6. And in those days, he was younger than I am now. So I met an Ajahn Anan in his mid-40s. And so he could still climb up a mountain, and he could still stay in these days you go to Wat Map Jan, he's an elderly monk, he's had a few illnesses. Also, he's done his work, so he doesn't need to starve the starve the greed like he used to. So now you see him with nice fluffy socks and fluffy hat and driving around in a golf buggy. But when he was a young monk, he didn't use a blanket for the first 5 years in Ubon Ratchathani, and in winter can be quite cold. And he's very sincere and determined and got great results. But anyway, so he came to the place where I was, and then he started. He actually said to his Thai monks, well, he said to the Western monks, "I'm going to go with my Thai monks into the jungle for 4 or 5 days, and after that, I'll talk to the Westerners." He probably knew that once he started talking to us, there'd be a lot of talking because we have a lot of doubts, lots of things to talk about. But the Thai monks started to come out, and they were saying things about me that Ajahn Anan knew, having not yet talked to me yet, which is interesting. And I remember feeling this sense of, basically, he's capable of reading minds. And I remember thinking, he didn't ask my permission. And then I ended up having a little bit of an insight. I think it's my mind. But if someone has the power to see it, they can look at it. It's my thinking that it's mine and that it's a private matter is my opinion or my delusion. But of course, a great meditation master just looks at minds and just sees what's present, and it's not self. But he will know if you're having wholesome thoughts or unwholesome thoughts, skillful habits or unskillful habits. So anyway, when I did finally talk to him, as I said, I had a very sensitive character and I was suffering a lot. So I was asking him, I said, do you think I can do this? And he looked at me and he says, "Achalo, you have merit." And that was very, very helpful. It's a great master said, "You've got some good karma there." Then I'm like, "Am I trainable?" I asked him. And he says, "You are. Can I come and stay with you?" Next question. "Yes, you can. I invite you." So that was after I'd been a monk at Wat Nanachat, and it was after what we call Pansa. That was after my first Pansa. So my second Pansa, I went and stayed with Ajahn Anan. And his first trip to Australia was after that rainy season retreat, and I went with him as well. And I think I stayed with him for 7 months, and during that 7 months, I was able to ask many questions. And what I was most impressed about with Ajahn was the sense that whoever asked a question, he was really looking at them, and he would give a different answer for different people. So one had the sense that he was really considering your situation, seeing it clearly, and giving advice from the perspective of someone who had a lot of wisdom. So if someone's on top of a mountain and he's looking down the mountain, and he could see that different people are in different parts of the mountain trying to come up, they have different obstructions in front of them, or they have different physical abilities, for example. So I felt that Ajahn Anan was able to see where I was at, and then he was able to suggest what the next step for me was for where I was at. And another thing I really loved about his teaching ability was that he would also often give you a selection of choices. Say, we could do this, or you could do this, or you could do that. And then so you could then consider what you felt would be most helpful to you. And then another person came along with similar doubts, and I'd noticed that he would answer differently. Probably having some awareness of a person's character traits, their strengths and their weaknesses. And so that it was also a lot of suffering, because not many of the Thai monks spoke any English, and I didn't speak much Thai. So there was kind of a certain amount of loneliness and a certain amount of paranoia. It's not like the fact that Ajahn came to the jungle was wonderful. I'm very, how wonderful. I'm so grateful. But in this life in general, things aren't handed to you on a gold platter. You do have to work hard, whoever you are. And I had to work hard, not to run away and to put up with what was difficult. But what I needed in terms of specific advice and a little bit of encouragement and a lot of metta, Ajahn helped me a lot in that period. And I remember thinking something else as well. When he was at that jungle place, we shouldn't think like this, and I'm not encouraging it, but I couldn't help it. I was thinking, but I need a sign. I need a sign that Ajahn Anan is my teacher, because I'd made this big prayer at the Emerald Buddha, and I need a sign. And so there were 5 pieces of pizza, and there were 9 monks. And Ajahn Anan put his piece of pizza on his bowl lid, and he told the monk next to him, "This is for Achalo." And every monk passed the bowl lid with the piece of pizza to me, and then I got the bowl lid with the piece of pizza. And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, Ajahn Anand's my teacher. Ajahn Anand's my so that was very nice. And also it kind of points to the fact that he was probably aware, I'm sitting there thinking, I need a sign. Well, what have I got? Oh, I've got pizza. The Western monk would probably appreciate a piece of pizza. So, yeah. And then when you talk with these masters, having been able to spend some time with him over many years, I realized that our karmic connection is fairly deep, I would say, from several different countries in several recent past lives. So that was my good fortune. And I try to share with a lot of people the way he teaches and share his wisdom. I just finished the first book today, by the way, is now edited. There's lots of Ajahn Anan says this, Ajahn Anan says that in that book. So coming soon. Third question. Number 3, I think. How do we maintain our mind to have right view, right intention? Sometimes out of habitual tendencies, our thoughts and intentions may carry some form of ill will, greed or jealousy, and we may not always be aware of these thoughts. How do we maintain good thoughts? So you will have noticed from the last couple of sessions that Ajahn Achalo stresses the importance of meditating in the morning before you get busy, before you go out into your day, and also stress the importance of metta bhavana. So in general, if a person meditates for 45 minutes, the first 10 or 15 minutes are metta, and then the next half an hour is the breath meditation. If you're establishing goodwill and you're establishing clarity, so that it's important to understand that you can't not experience these things yet. So sometimes we aim too high. Normally, when you think of Anya Kondanya's insight, all that is of the nature to arise is of the nature to cease. So his first insight was into impermanence. In terms of really doing something about the amount of greed and hatred that's latent in the mind, that comes at the Sakadagami level. After the stream entry level, there's a lot more what they call hiriyottapa. So there's a lot more conscience. There's a lot more not wanting to harm anybody. But even the stream enterer still has ill will and anger, and still has lust and greed. So it's important to understand that. The first level of sainthood, these practitioners still experience these things. So if you're not yet at that level, to want to not experience them at all is not practical and not possible. What you can do is, with generating mindfulness and applying remedies, you can definitely weaken the potency, the presence of, the power of these things in your mind, for sure. Often what one has to do, though, is that when it comes up, you have enough mindfulness, you don't necessarily have enough mindfulness to not think it, but you have enough mindfulness to say you don't say something. Or you have enough mindfulness to tell yourself, okay, you've already thought it, don't keep thinking it. Or you have enough mindfulness to remind yourself, think wisely now. Because sometimes you're getting angry at someone, you're going to say something, when you have to think, well, what are the consequences going to be? And it's like, if you can have a reflectivity around your daily activities, so you're considering what you're doing and what the consequences will be. So as mindfulness gets more powerful, it's possible that you can be quite irritated with a person and they don't even know, because it's like that quality of presence of mind is so established, and the irritation's just bubbling, but you're not allowing it to manifest as body language or speech. And in response to the irritation, somebody might be really irritating you, but you've trained yourself into, may I be well, may I be happy, may I be well, may I be happy. And the person outside you will have some kind of awareness of somebody sitting there generating metta, and they might not know that you're irritated with them or they disappointed you. So, but the point is, it's not that there isn't irritation and that there isn't some unskillful thoughts. It's just that there are enough of the spiritual powers to reflect wisely, restrain the mind, keep it within the parameters of virtue. The other thing, of course, is if you fall into it, that kind of reactivity, ill will or jealousy or those kind of things, is you do have to forgive yourself. And contemplating the drawbacks, you try not to do it again. But trying not to have these things at all and trying not to experience them at the level that most people are at isn't possible. So there's a word they say in Thai, tamada, which means it's nature or it's normal. It has two meanings. It's normal and it's nature. So it's like, yeah, it's normal. You don't have to hate yourself about it. You don't have to reject your efforts. You just keep adding clarity to the situation. You just keep adding wisdom to the situation. You just keep adding metta to the situation, and you keep your ethical precepts, certain things boundaries that you don't go over. And if you do go over them, you start again. In Buddhism, we can always start again. Thank goodness. But as a gift to yourself and those around you, you really try to maintain your virtue. And I also mentioned last week that you'll probably notice if you do your morning practice that as the day goes on, you can feel the sense of presence and clarity degenerating if you get too busy. And so if you can, take a break in the afternoon, do another session of sitting, regenerate sense of clarity and presence of mind so that you don't fall into, the thing about habits is they're deep. So millions of lives of reacting in certain ways. So we have to generate quite powerful opponent forces to our habits, make new habits. So if you can, morning session, afternoon session, evening session, generate clarity so that you can catch these things more quickly and make less and less karma with them. When we make less and less karma with them, over time they do get weaker. And when we make more and more karma with the loving and kind and compassionate response, or equanimous response, that also becomes like second nature. It's like you can train yourself that will be your first response. That even if there's some irritation or some unpleasant feeling or some pain, you go so quickly into may I be well, may I be happy, may I be well, may I be happy. As a response to the sensitivity to the dukkha, to respond to it with metta, we can train ourselves to do this. And sometimes called replacement by opposites. When there's suffering in your mind, may I be well, may I be happy, may I be well, may I be happy, you just pick up a wholesome mind object and the negative one has to fall away. And, but that kind of ability comes from a regular and consistent discipline. And I think also setting the intention. So you sit, you meditate. A lot of people get into the habit of just trying to make the mind a little bit peaceful and being content with a bit of fuzzy, dreamy sleepiness. And it's like, well, okay, wonderful to get any peacefulness at all. It's good. But at the end of the session, we have to set the intention. Okay, I intend to be mindful, because the intention is very powerful. Mind is the forerunner. I intend to be mindful. I intend to take this clarity and presence into my day and behave as a Buddhist practitioner who is engaged in mental training. And that kind of determination helps. It really does, because the mind might be about to fall into some unwholesomeness, and the fact that you set this intention, it springs up. You said you were going to be mindful. Bing. You said you were going to be careful. It's kind of qualities that guard the mind. I hope that was helpful. Some people. There was one last question. How to reduce our attachment to parents and loved ones, particularly for monastics or serious lay practitioners. Again, I think what the metta practice does is it takes this tendency that we have to like a few people very much, and you're sublimating that, you're cultivating that, developing that further. So when you train yourself to have a loving kindness for the people close to you who you care for, but then you really train at establishing loving kindness for what they would call neutral people in larger numbers, and then work up to even people who irritate you, and you develop this ability, this capacity for love becomes a much more broad and expansive thing. It's not the case that monastics don't have a love life, if I can say that. It's you evolving your capacity to love so that it becomes much more broad and vast and impartial. But if a person really knows how to hold loving kind energy in their own body and mind experience, that sense of longing to be able to love those few special people or to receive their love is ameliorated to some degree, because you already have love and you're already demonstrating and expressing your love, not necessarily with hugs and kisses and pats on the back, but with sitting there and radiating your goodwill outwards. And so I think the metta practice can really help expand that capacity, so that when you feel that it's your duty to try to develop an impartial loving kindness for as many beings as possible, it's taking that attachment that contracts around a few, and you're developing a new attachment, but as a wholesome attachment, it's a skillful means, and you're making it much more broad. So another thing, of course, is the wisdom reflection. So you can ask yourselves, how many more sets of parents do you want? How many more times do you want to have children? How many more times do you want to go to kindergarten, primary school, secondary school, university? How many more marriages do you want? And, sometimes you need a bit of fierce wisdom. Attachment, loving attachment, is binding you to samsara. This is a cause, the fuel for your rebirth. So sometimes you just have a stiff talking to yourself, like, okay, you're going to love this person that much and long after them that much. Well, get ready for your rebirth. And in that rebirth, you're going to be experiencing association with the disliked and separation from the loved. How does that wonderful phrase go? Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. That's what we get with birth, isn't it? So you don't just get the people that you love, and you don't just get to spend time with the ones you love either. And be honest, even the ones you love, you don't love them all the time, do you? You have to think wisely as well. Slowly relax the grip around it. And but I found developing goodwill towards many people is a way that the love finds its expression and it finds its object, and it doesn't need to express it with a selective small group of people as much. At least that's my experience. And another thing is, you can train yourself, and this is what practice does. The more benefits you get from practice is that there's nothing wrong with really loving the Buddha, and there's nothing wrong with really loving the Dhamma. And you don't want your love of the Buddha to make you go and fight with people of other religions. But I'm just saying, if you're of the character type that needs to love, well, then you can love the Buddha. You can love his teachings that resonate with you most of all. And that's a very, very healthy place to put your love. Because when you go and have a rebirth, the chances of it's our loving attachments affect where we get born to a considerable degree. So we want to be born where there is a Buddha, or we want to be born where there is Buddhist teachings. It's a very good thing if you really love the Buddha. So, okay. Going to do these verses of sharing and aspiration.
Okay, Ajahn.
Did you want to see if there's any more questions, Joyce, or shall we do that after the chanting?
Would you like to take one more question, Ajahn?
Yeah, if people have questions, I'm happy to take them.
Is there any
Also,
questions?
if anybody
Anyone?
needs to go,
Please raise your hand and unmute.
if anybody needs to go, I give you my permission. You may go if you need to. And you can ask a question, and you can listen to other people's questions if you like.
Anyone has any questions? I think, Ajahn, we'll just wrap it up, John.
Okay, good.
Ajahn, yeah.
Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother and my father and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life, may they soon attain the threefold bliss, and realize the deathless, through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble Lord. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. We can do the Arahant together. Pay respects to the three jewels. Arahant Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Apivadevi Swakato Bhagavata Tapo Dhammang Namasami Supatipatno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami.
I think Sister Joyce dropped from the call. So
Okay.
let's pay due respect to Ajahn Anan together.
Three bows to Ajahn Anan, please.
Just having another look at my lovely students and Dharma friend. Hi Chuiwan, hi Messiang, hi Monica, hi Ping, hi Nichi Ying, Chintana, Victor
Morning,
Nell,
Ajahn.
hi. Okay, lovely to see you all. Sri An, Wantani, Dukkhi, Nihao, Leslie, Nick, Raymond, hi. Elizabeth Gu is there, Shunxing is there, Angie's there, Shireen and son, Ryan. Where are you from, Pam? It's a lady called Pam. Doris, Jean. Is Ryan in Singapore? Is it? See, Yuan is in Singapore, I think. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Elizabeth's son. How are you?
Hello.
How's the cat? How's the cat?
Yes.
We got a second rescue cat, a 4-week-old baby, and our Siamese card has adopted him and is
Oh, that's
raising
nice.
him.
And where's the Siamese one?
I think he is in bed already, sleeping next
he's sleeping.
to Simon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Sammy, next time you show me the cat now, Siamese cat now.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Good night.
So
Thank you
sweet.
so much. So good to see you. Bye.
Nice to see you too, Elizabeth.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Sammy. Erica, where's your husband? Shenzhen, Steve, say you and Sharon. Steve Cochran. Hi, Steve.
Schön, ne?
How are you?
Good, thank you. Clinton is in Japan, I believe.
Yes, I am.
Joyce just forwarded your email to me today.
Oh, thank you
Nice to
very
meet
much.
you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for everything. Thank you for sharing all your teachings. Been really helpful. Thank you so much.
Very good. Wonderful. I'm happy to hear. Aparajita is busy with book designing. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great.
Suping, Patty is here again. Medao, Narissa. Narissa helped a lot with the editing of my books now. When you read my books and you think, oh, these thoughts are so clearly constructed, you have to thank Narissa and Ajahn Pabro as well. I received help. Sorry?
Had wonderful material to work with.
Thank you. You did a good job. Okay. Okay, I'll say good night. Wishing you all well. And take care.
Good night, Ajahn.
Bye.